Let's talk about creating a journey map, what it is, the structure of it or the anatomy of it, and how to make one. So journey map is to capture and visualize people's experience, to better empathize with their goals and needs. And so let's talk specifically about what a journey map is. It's a flow chart, simply a journey. That's where the word journey comes from. It's somebody going through a experience, and we don't usually, it could be a service, it could be intake, it could be going to get food for the family from the food drop-off, it could be getting vaccinated, could be getting COVID tests. So what we traditionally call a process, because that's from the organization's point of view, we call a journey because it's we're going to look at it from that person's perspective. And it's not important what we're doing so much as what experience they're having. So it's a flowchart of the person's experience, not your internal process. And it has a simple structure, but it's a really rich structure, actually, that you can layer information on. But it has columns that are the key stages in the experience. And then it has rows that are just descriptive dimensions of each one of those stages. So it's just a table, right? And so you can make this with a spreadsheet, any table tool. You can go on Google Sheets. It's very easy to make. And you can also simply do it by organizing sticky notes in header titles for each one of those stages, row titles, and then you can put sticky notes. And in fact, that's how they often start, is just using sticky notes on a board to figure out what that journey is really like. And these are iterative, okay? So that's a journey map. Here's the anatomy, what it looks like. This is a simple one. This is almost the simplest you can have, which is just the stage titles across the top. In this case, this one has research, comparison, workshop, quote, and sign off. So this is some sort of buying process. And then along the left-hand side, you see typical questions, emotions and feelings, and we need to, or what we need to do in response to these issues. So this is a nice, simple structure. This is where you can get started, something like this. But I'd like to show you that one thing that they have is this middle column, which is what the person who's going through that journey or that experience is feeling or thinking or questions they have, right? And so that's why we need a little bit of understanding of who those people really are and what their experience is really like. That's why your observations and open-ended interviews are so critical to doing this well. To make it up is to presume you know what's happening, right? And what do we know about the Catalyst mindsets? Open-mindedness, beginner's mind, what's really happening? Not what do I think should be happening, but what is really happening. And we often find that other people's experiences are much different. What they're experiencing, what they're feeling, what they're thinking is much different than what we think is happening. Okay, so this is a little bit more graphical version. And I'm showing you this one because you'll recognize the structure. It has the columns, which are the stages, and 5 to 7 stages are going to be fine. Don't overcomplicate it. Just get the major steps. Those stages are important parts of that experience, right? Maybe traveling to a site, figuring out where to go on the site, getting a service, and maybe there's 2 pieces there, and then maybe there's exit, right? So this 5 to 7 columns is really quite common. And then what you see here is that emotion on a line, on a graph on a line, like things are going good and they're positive emotions, and when it goes down, you know that they're having a negative, or more of a negative experience. And many journey maps will put this emotional roller coaster, if you will, in the journey map. You don't have to do that. And you can see that as I show a couple more examples, they can get a little bit more detailed. And this is all I want to show here. Here they even put, a vision of the people who are going through the experience, a little image. Again, you have columns that are the stages. Up there, they're annotating the emotional journey with additional flags or additional sticky notes. And down at the bottom, they have opportunities. So, and they have information needs. So you can construct these rows to be whatever's helpful. And again, keeping it simple, we have a suggested structure to start with. But realize, like I said last week, and I say almost every time, all of these tools are meant to be useful to you. So if you don't want to use one of those rows because it's not relevant, then you don't use it. You put in a row that is relevant. And ultimately, what you're trying to do is have a concrete, documented understanding of someone's experience. Now you can go, and when you're designing your solution, you can say, here's some needs they have across that experience, right? And you see how they play out over time. And across that experience, different people in your organization may be involved in different stages. That's why it's important to kind of look at it in this structured way. Okay, so how do you build one of these? Very straightforward, since now that you understand or have a feel for the anatomy or the structure. First of all, you got to do your research. You got to have an understanding of what people are really going through. So observe and interview one or more people about their experience, relevant to about their experience, which is their journey, right? And then from that, you want to identify 5 to 7 key stages that become those columns. And that's kind of the first thing to get right is, and not right, but kind of lay it out, is to get those columns. Again, how do you do it? You get with your team, you run a collaborative cycle. Okay, let's talk about the stages in this journey. And you all brainstorm, I think this could be one. Let's brainstorm all the stages, let's cluster them. Now let's organize them into roughly 5 to 7 columns or stages, okay? So then you'll name those, and then you use the following rows just to get started. The person's key goal in that stage, questions they have in that stage. I think this whole notion of what they're trying to get done and what questions they have during that experience are so critical to understanding their experience, not the service provider's experience, right? And then feeling and emotions that they may have, the needs, the specific needs or challenges they face in that stage. And then remember this is the interpretive part, if they're having those challenges or if they're thinking these things, what are some opportunities for us to help? What are some opportunities to support them, right? And those are going to become ideas that fit into potential solutions, all right? And then, so you add those rows, and then you start with sticky notes and try to build that first version. Again, collaboratively with your team is the best. And then these things are not about getting them perfect the first time. They're about throwing some stuff up there, discussing it, iterating it, and doing that 2 or 3 times to get to a final version. Again, it's not going to be perfect. The whole idea is not to resolve every possible discussion that you have as a team, but to get a good representation of that journey. Okay? And of course, like always, there's a template in Miro for you. It's the journey map. It's in the shared template area. And for any coaches, I've added it to the shared coaches Miro board that you can go in there and copy and paste it into your own board. And so all I did is set up a simple table with stage placeholders along the top, 5 of them, and then these areas that I suggested you use along the left-hand side. Again, you can change them out, and then I would just work with your team to do a collaborative cycle to fill those in and figure out what that overall experience is like. Okay? So that's the journey map. Simple diagram, but you got to know your user's experience, and you have to get in there and play with it to capture something that's helpful to your team. Okay, the second thing I wanted to go over today is let's talk about using a simple persona. And this is capturing the essence of the people and understanding them with more empathy and understanding their needs specifically. And you can see how their experience or their journey and capturing who they are and their attitudes and what their needs are go hand in hand. It's just 2 different views of the person's experience. One is the person themselves, in this case the persona, and the other is the journey map. Okay, so here is a typical commercial persona. These probably started being developed 15 years ago or so, 15, 20 years ago. And the whole idea was to capture several in any given project. You had several people who you were trying to understand this is who we're designing for, this is who we're creating this service for. And these ones are very marketing and commercial oriented. Here's a cool one of Drew, a little bit simpler, right? And so I want to show you these differences to encourage you to make a persona that your team wants to make, that has the qualities and characteristics that your organization or that you want to bring to your project. But it's simply, it's not a single person that you're looking at, but it's a kind of an amalgamation or characteristic of the type of person that would be using the service, right? And there's going to be idiosyncrasies across your customers or clients, people you offer the service to, but nonetheless, you can identify maybe 2 or 3 different ones that are key categories that you want to design for and design with. So what is a persona? It's a document capturing the qualities of people important to the solution you will design, right? So who are we designing for? What are their lives like? What are their needs? What do they say about their experience? It's built from understanding real life people, but generalized into a more generic form that you can share in your organization. And you can capture why you're moving a solution in a certain way because of who this is being offered to and who you want to attract and support and serve in your service. It captures their attitudes, their goals, what are they trying to achieve, their needs and challenges with respect to your project space. So it can have broader implications of their lives, but usually we look at it in relationship to the service. And it's used to communicate and maintain awareness of these end users or these people throughout your project. Okay? So this is the role it plays, is as you start to develop a solution, you go back and say, will this work for Drew? Is this still working? Let's go back and cross-reference. Again, you cross-reference that journey map as well in your process. You share that journey map with people as you're developing and trying prototypes of the solution. Here's an example from Venice Family Clinic from several years ago. And you can see that this one isn't laid out in any sort of specific way, but it does capture the name of the character, if you will. In this case, it's Tired Trisha. And we try to use this catchy name to give you a sense of who that person is. And then they just have 4 categories of demographics, attitudes, behaviors related to prenatal care, and their needs, goals, and motivations related to prenatal care. And so after having interviewed some expecting mothers, they put this together to try to remember and capture who they're designing for. Here's another Catalyst example. This is Shirley Confused. And this was, I think, for both prenatal care and giving birth, pregnancy. And again, this one is built in a little bit of a template we had a couple years ago in Catalyst. It has who that person is, trying to capture them in a picture, background, motivations, goals and desires, a quote, and their frustrations and needs. So you get the idea, right? Just a few categories of information to try to capture who you're designing for. And there's a Miro template for that. So I tried to simplify it a little bit, but just that because we have the dimensions in here doesn't mean you have to fill them all in, but it's a great starter template for getting in there. And so we have a 1-sentence description, goals and motivations, quotes, their lived experience, the history, any trauma, kind of capturing that notion of what have they faced in their lives and who are we designing for, frustrations and challenges with their experience, key characteristics and attitudes, and key needs in their experience. And then I put this little box over to the side, which is about having places for ideas for a good solution would address what aspects of this, or a good solution might have these ideas in it, right? And so you can see how as you start to capture these things, you do a little synthesis and a little reflection and get some of these ideas going, okay? Again, in the Miro template shared area, as well as the coach's shared Miro board. template board. How do you create a persona? Again, it starts with understanding who that person is you're representing. So it starts with open-ended interviews. You can see why we've been emphasizing the need to talk with people and understand their experience and hear their story. It is the foundation to really understanding how you're going to design this new experience. It's where a lot of insight comes from. Second, use a collaborative cycle with your team to brainstorm persona characteristics from your interviews. Right? There's that collaborative cycle again, working with your team. What do we see? What do we think? Here's the characteristics from the list I shared with you. Then you start clustering. So you see how the first thing you do is kind of write down all the things you've been hearing from different people, and you get those out onto the same shared board. But now you're going to cluster them. These are needs, and those needs might have come from 3 or 4 different people. And here are some frustrations, and here are some different backgrounds or attitudes. By sorting through those, you might take, if you talk to 5 people, maybe you end up with just 2 personas, right? But the voices and the attributes of those 5 different people are captured in the 2 personas. So you're clustering. And that's why they're more aggregated and generalized than just being one specific person. Okay, and then once you've clustered them and say, you know what, we really need 2 or 3 personas to describe these people, then you break those off, name them, give them that memorable name that captures something about their experience, and fill in the other areas of the persona that are helpful to you and your team to remember and capture. Okay, actually, yeah, let me show one more thing. Whoops, sorry. I want to give one more very recent example where personas are being used, and they're a little bit more of it's more of an analytic tool with generative solutions for each one of those personas in the area of vaccine uptake. So this was developed by Sergio Ventures and CCI, and Vinu and Sophie just shared it with me, and I'm just going to share this with you as an example, quick example of how personas can really help. So they looked at how could we create a series of questions that could help us understand the different attitudes and ideas around vaccination, and then use that to create solutions or directions for providers on how they can better serve the people with the different attitudes towards vaccine. So they came up in their work with a little persona tool that if you go through it and ask the questions, it determines one of 5 different personas. So see how this is a tool that's a little bit of a segmentation tool, but delivered within a persona so that they're easy to remember and easy to use in your care facility. So here they are, and this is a simple chart. This is a simple chart, but it's not a journey map. So these aren't stages. These are the personas up at the top, right? And so conspiracy believers, system distrusters, cost anxious, watchful, and enthusiasts. And I just want to emphasize that, see how they're using the title of it to kind of give you the essence of what that persona is all about. And then they give some likelihoods of the percentage of people that are falling into those categories. And then solutions. I think this is great that they said, okay, if you have that persona, or if that's the type of patient you're serving, then here's some important actions you need to take to resonate with them and serve their needs in this process of getting a vaccination, of determining, deciding to go ahead and get a vaccination, right? So I thought this was a nice little example to show how it can really play out in a quick way and a helpful way in the realm of a very topical need in the country right now.